I'm gonna break your neck, Rolf.
Where can a kid around?
Billy!
Where can he act like a clown?
Billy!
Oh, what a face! There's just one place for a silly Billy like you. Come to Chuck E. Cheese, you can turn it loose. Make him laugh, have some fun, be a silly goose. You're a kid, shout it out. That's what we're all about. Chuck E. Cheese, where a kid can be a kid.
Chuck E. Cheese's, known as the place where a kid can be a kid, has been a part of everyone's childhood, including me. This popular pizza chain with arcades and animatronics has spread all around the globe, from California to Texas to Florida to Illinois. But there's one location that I would like to talk about, and that place is Indianapolis, Indiana. Because I think its history is certainly a fascinating one, and plus, it's right next to Louisville. So in this video, I will be going over the over 40-year history of the 5 locations in Indianapolis. Yes, there were 5 of them. From 2 locations that opened and closed around the same time, to 2 locations still operating but in a sad state, to the only standout location. This is the history of Chuck E. Cheese's and Showbiz Pizza in Indianapolis, Indiana. You might want to get some popcorn and snacks and get comfortable, since this is going to be a long one. So before I talk about Chuck E. Cheese's and Showbiz Pizza in Indianapolis, I want to quickly go over the history of each one. Chuck E. Cheese's was founded on May 17, 1977, and opened its first location in San Jose, California. It was created by Nolan Bushnell, who was also the co-founder of the video game company Atari. He wanted to make a place that families could hang out and play the latest arcade games, since before this arcades were seen as dangerous places due to violence. As for Showbiz Pizza, it was founded on March 3, 1980 and opened its first location in Kansas City, Missouri. It was founded by Robert Brock, who was also the founder of the Brock Hotel Corporation. He was originally a franchisee with Pizza Time Theater, but then saw companies making more advanced animatronics and decided to start his own company, with the help of Aaron Fechter, the founder of Creative Engineering. As for Indianapolis, Indiana's history, it's a little complicated. Indianapolis, Indiana was established in January 1821 and was soon made the state capital of Indiana a few years later. I couldn't find out how Indianapolis got its name, but if I had to guess, it was probably because there were a ton of Native Americans who lived in and around the state of Indiana. It currently has a population of 882,039 as of 2021, making it the largest city in the state of Indiana. Obviously a great place for a one-toothed bear and a big fat pizza rat to expand to. Now since we've got 5 locations to talk about, I'm going to do things a little differently. I'm going to go over a location's entire history in a single chapter, to make things easier on me and you all. But with all that said, let's go back over 40 years to when the locations first opened in the Circle City.
Showbiz Pizza is so good!
We make the dough fresh every day, pile on the good things.
It's great, I say.
We make them and bake them and serve them with pride at Showbiz Pizza Place.
Showbiz Pizza Place. Great fun and great pizza.
Come for the pizza and stay for the fun!
At Showbiz Pizza Place.
So I'm actually going to group all 4 Showbiz Pizza locations into one chapter, because I couldn't find much info on any of them, and plus I'd be repeating myself a lot if I gave them all individual chapters. I will give each location their own chapters after they all become Chuck E. Cheese's locations, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically what I'm saying is, since all the Showbiz Pizza locations were very similar, I'm going to mention them here in this chapter to save time. The first Showbiz Pizza to open in Indianapolis was the location on West 38th Street. It opened on November 4th, 1981 and quickly became the most popular place in town. Not only was this the first Showbiz Pizza to open in Indianapolis, but it was actually the first of either one of the two businesses in this video to open in the state of Indiana, as not even Pizza Time Theater opened a location in the state at this point. The restaurant was located on West 38th Street and was just a couple miles away from the Lafayette Square Mall. It was also one of the earliest Showbiz Pizzas, being the 35th location to ever open. Unfortunately, there's absolutely no photos or videos of what this particular location looked like during the Showbiz era, or if there is any photos, I couldn't find any of them. So for the purpose of this video, I will be using photos and videos from other locations. This also applies to the other 3 indie locations. I'm guessing that it probably looked like any other Showbiz Pizza open at the time. Except I know at the time it did not have a large entrance like most Showbiz Pizzas. It was rather flat. They had a large game room with over 60 arcade games. Some of the games at the location include the classic skee ball and other popular arcade games like Pac-Man. And for smaller children, there was a couple of small kiddie rides like a helicopter, an old school looking plane, and a small jungle gym with a ball pit. There was also a salad bar, and they sold other food items like sandwiches, ice cream, and even beer, for the adults that is. Fun fact, for the longest time, the 38th Street location was the only Showbiz Pizza in Indianapolis to have a beer license, though the other locations would soon follow after. There were 2 dining areas at this Showbiz Pizza, the first being the sports room, which was also called the quiet room. That room had a large TV that played sports games, and there were some sports decorations on the walls. The second dining area was the main dining area, referred to as the showroom. This is where you could go to get the real entertainment, provided by the Rockafire Explosion Band. This band of animated animals performed on 3 stages, singing popular songs and performing comedy routines. The characters on the stage include Rolf the Wolf with his puppet Earl, Duke LaRue the drum-playing dog, Fats Geronimo the gorilla on the keyboard, Beach Bear on the guitar, Mitzi Mozzarella the lead female singer who's a mouse, Billy Bob the Bear who's playing the guitar, and who's also the mascot of Showbiz Pizza, and last but not least Looney Bird the drunk bird, who drinks gas and lives in a can. There were also a few prop characters that would pop up from time to time, such as the sun, the moon, Choo Choo the bear cub, and the birthday spider named Antioch. It's also very possible one or more of the Indianapolis locations had other side characters, like Uncle Clunk, Santa Claus, or the Statue of Liberty. Finally, there was a Billy Bob mascot who was used when the band wasn't performing, or when there was a birthday party. Billy Bob also made multiple appearances outside of Showbiz Pizza around the Indianapolis area. This also applies to other Showbiz locations too. Alright, so now that I got the basics of a Showbiz Pizza location out of the way, that's all the information I could find on the 38th Street location. The rest of the information I have on this location will be saved for when it becomes a CEC. So let's go ahead and talk about the next location, and this one you might be more familiar with. The next Showbiz Pizza location to open in Indianapolis, Indiana was the Castleton location. It opened on April 28, 1982 as the 65th Showbiz Pizza location. The restaurant is located on East 82nd Street and is a part of the Castleton Point Shopping Center, which is right across the street from the Castleton Square Mall. Unfortunately, just like the location on 38th Street, I barely have any information on what this location looked like when it first opened. There's no exterior or interior photos. I'm pretty sure that it was identical to the previous location, but it was slightly larger and had the standard Showbiz Pizza entrance. I did actually find some photos of their Rockafire Explosion Band taken around 1991, and it's pretty much just a regular show, but I did notice Duke's hat is gone. I wonder if that was intentional or it fell off during a performance. They had the same arcade room and same sports room, but they did have some different kiddie rides like a motorcycle, a race car, and the same helicopter ride as the other one. They had the same games as the other location like Skee-Ball and Pac-Man, but they did have some different games like Whack-A-Demon. And that's all I have on the Castleton location at the moment. Let's go on to the next one, and this one I'll keep brief. The third Showbiz Pizza to open in Indianapolis was the old location on East Washington Street, not to be confused with the current location. It opened on June 18, 1982 and was the 79th location to open. The restaurant was located in the Washington Square Shopping Center, which was also called the Target Shopping Center since its main store was, you guessed it, Target. And once again, I couldn't find a single photo or video of this location. But I do know that the exterior was flat, just like the 38th Street location. Though that does make sense since it probably had to follow the same exterior rules the rest of the shopping center stores did. They had the same exact things the other location did. Same games, same rides, same show, and same interiors. One cool thing I did find out about this specific location was that it held several chess tournaments from 1983 to 1986. Alright, one more location down, and one more location to talk about before we get to the Chuck E. Cheese part of each location's history. The fourth and final Showbiz Pizza location to open in Indianapolis was the Greenwood location. It opened on November 10th, 1982, a little over a year after the first location opened. It was the 119th location to open. Out of all the locations I've mentioned so far, this is the only one that has the least amount of information on it. I could barely find anything about it. What I do know is that it was located in the Greenwood Shopping Center and had a standard strip mall exterior for a Showbiz location. It's also the only confirmed Indianapolis location that held teen nights. I'm sure the other ones did as well, but this is the only one I can definitively say held them. And just to get this out of the way, they had the same offerings as the other three locations. Interestingly, this location in particular was pretty heavily marketed in newspapers in the Indianapolis area. I saw many articles mentioning a fourth Showbiz Pizza opening in Indianapolis. Even before Castleton and Washington Street were completed, they already started work on Greenwood. Showbiz executives were certain that Indianapolis was a great place for the business, which that does make sense because they were all very popular, but why did they have to open 4 locations in the same city, within miles of each other? Isn't that kind of oversaturating the market? I don't know, I'm not an expert on running a business. Over the next several years, the 4 Showbiz Pizza locations of Indianapolis became fan-favorite locations, and held several birthday parties and events. They all held the same events every other Showbiz held, like Hollander Nights on Wednesdays, Fats Nights on Mondays, and Western Nights on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But now let's fast forward a little bit to the late 80s, just after the merger between Showbiz Pizza and Pizza Time Theater. All locations started receiving changes, including the addition of Chuck E. Cheese finally making his debut in Indy. But little did people realize that Chuck E.'s stay in Naptown was going to be more permanent than they thought. And for that, the locations will go their separate ways as I discuss every location's history in separate chapters, starting with the location on 38th Street.
I just want to go for a ride.
You can race, dip and zoom, you can scoot, you can fly at Showbiz Pizza, you can shoot for the sky, float or down, climb aboard, cause we're always nearby at Showbiz Pizza, where a kid can be a kid.
As the early 90s came along, the 4 Showbiz Pizzas in Indianapolis, Indiana were still going strong. But behind the scenes within the Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated company, things were anything but going strong. You see, the company was trying to get the rights to the Rockafire Explosion, but Aaron Fechter, the creator of the Rockafire Explosion, didn't want to give up the rights to the band. And so instead, the company created something that will make a Showbiz fan's spine tingle: concept unification. For those of you unaware, concept unification was this process where the rockafire explosion would go completely extinct and be stripped down to their mechs, only to be replaced by the Chuck E. Cheese characters, also known as Munch's Make-Believe Band. Rolf the Wolf became Chuck E. Cheese himself, Mitzi Mozzarella became Helen Henny, Fats Geronimo became Mr. Munch, Beach Bear became Jasper T. Jowls, and Duke LaRue became everyone's favorite Pasquale the Chef. The prop characters were also replaced. The Sun became the Building, Choo Choo became Munch Jr., Looney Bird became the Pizza Can, and the Spider was removed completely and replaced with the Wink. The Moon, however, stayed behind. This change to the animatronics wasn't the only thing that was changed, as the whole company was rebranded and the Showbiz Pizza name was dropped in favor of the name Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza, though some stores still kept the Showbiz name. The Indy 38th Street location did keep the Showbiz name a little while after concept unification, but soon changed it to Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza. Which, speaking of 38th Street, I couldn't find the exact date of when they received concept unification, but I believe it was between 1991 and 1992. This saddened many Showbiz fans as the characters they knew and loved for years were now dead, and in their place were essentially knockoffs. Now I do actually like the Chuck E. Cheese bots, but it's still sad to see the rockafire go. You can actually watch the full concept unification tape on YouTube, but I will warn you, it might make you cry. The whole restaurant soon went through another remodel around the time of concept unification happening. This is the Phase 2 remodel, where all Showbiz Pizza decor was removed and replaced with CEC decor. Some new decor included these record posters and chasing lights. This is also the remodel that introduced the white walls with the colorful checkers. They kept the same games and rides as before, but some new additions were brought in, like a new ball pit, and some more modern games like basketball hoops. Nothing changed at the 38th Street location until around the late 90s, when it went through the next and final remodel. This time it was converted into a Phase 3 store. This remodel ditched the Phase 2 decor and look, and replaced it with the new late 90s decor, such as sports equipment on the walls, movie parody posters, and those shelves with all the cool knickknacks on them. However, some Phase 2 decor like the record posters and some checkers stayed behind. The exterior was also changed to the normal Phase 3 Cool Chuck logo, and the pizza part was dropped, making it just Chuck E. Cheese's. And finally, more new games and rides were added, like the Price is Right coin game, the Chuck E. car that takes your picture, and hey look, it's Bob the Builder! Sadly, the ball pit was removed and replaced with the new Sky Tubes. Going into the new millennium, aka the 2000s, not much changed at this location. The only major changes made were to the animatronics. Now, even though I mentioned them earlier in the chapter, I didn't go into specifics with the 38th Street stage, like how Jasper still had the Beach Bear guitar, and Pasquale had Duke's drum front. Munch also had the same keyboard front as Coleraine did. And finally, Chucky didn't stand on a bass like on other 3 stages. As for what changed, all the characters had their latex masks replaced with the more familiar plastic masks, except Munch Jr., since he got removed. Pizza Can was also removed, but the building got to stay. I'm not sure about the Moon though, since I couldn't find him in any photos or videos. Other changes include Chuck receiving the Cool Chuck outfit and Munch's keyboard front. By 2011, this location was still the exact same as it had been since the 2000s, with only minor changes, but unfortunately something really sad was about to happen to this location. In November 2011, 30 years after it first opened, the Chuck E. Cheese's in 38th Street closed down. Now the reason it closed down is because this location and another location I'll discuss later were going to be replaced by another location, and I guess CEC thought it wasn't necessary to keep this one open. Other sources suggest a lease disagreement or loss of money. Whatever the reason, this location was permanently closed, and soon all traces of CEC were removed from the building. As for the animatronics, they were sent to other locations and used for spare parts. The building sat abandoned for over 4 years, still barring the label scar where the logo once was. Then in 2015, the building was converted into a Carplex car dealership, which is still open to this day. Now that the 38th Street's location history is over, let's move on to the next location, good old Castleton. And this is where things start to get interesting.
I go to Chuck E. Cheese, Dad?
Well, since you girls like it so much.
At Chuck E. Cheese, you can act like a kid. You'll have more fun than you ever did.
Just 2 more tokens.
You can laugh and you can play.
Dibs on the last piece of pizza.
You can do it your way.
Did you have fun, Dad?
Chuck E. Cheese,
I just came to watch my girls have a good time.
where a kid can be a kid.
So the Showbiz Pizza on Castleton actually went through concept unification before 38th Street did, but since it was the second location to open, I'm talking about it next, since I want to stay in order. They remodeled the entire restaurant into a Phase 2 store around 1991, shortly before the conversion. I know it was before then because of the screenshots showing the rockfire explosion at the Castleton location, and you can see the Phase 2 checkers in the background, and the new salad bar design. They then converted to Munch's Make Believe Band around 1991, but kept the Showbiz Pizza name till 1993, when they then became Chuck E. Cheese's, with the new logo. Which, speaking of the logo, I'm not sure if Castleton had the new Rainbow Showbiz logo, since they remodeled before the conversion, but it's more likely they kept the normal Showbiz logo. Also, fun fact, this location held a piano recital on Halloween in 1992. And to end off this section, I found a hilarious review of the location from a Karen in 1995. Link in the description for anyone who's interested. The next major changes made to the Castleton location occurred in the year 2000. This year the location was changed to a Phase 3 store, and it had pretty much the same things as the 38th Street location. The cool Chuck logo on the front of the building, red awnings, sports decor, those cool Chucky Andy Warhol paintings, sky tubes, and new games and rides. They also got the toddler zone and slide. But the biggest change made to the restaurant was the animatronic stage, as unfortunately the 3 stage was removed and replaced with the new at the time, Studio C Alpha. The Studio C Alpha stage consisted of a blue screen with an interactive camera, a large panel with an interactive controller, and 3 TVs, and of course the stage, which had a 32-movement Chuck E. Cheese animatronic created by the Garner Holt Company. The stage also has a parrot, a pizza phone, a pizza time clock, and an Apple TV, not to be confused with that Apple TV. Castleton kept the Phase 3 look for a few short years up until around 2008 or 2009, when it was remodeled once again. This time it was changed into a Phase 4 store. The whole store was expanded a little bit to add more space for the dining area and game room, and the exterior changed. This time the exterior was changed to have the Phase 4 purple awnings, the brown checkers, and the Avenger Chuck thumbs up logo. They also duplicated the entrance sign on the other side of the restaurant. As for the interior, walls were painted, Phase 3 decor was removed, and the normal Phase 4 Avenger Chuck posters and signage were added, but they did keep some Phase 3 posters. They also took out the showroom walls where the Studio C stage was. And speaking of Studio C, around the early 2010s they removed the interactive console and blue screen camera, due to the Ticket Blaster taking over the space. It was also around this time the stage started to malfunction a little bit, like in this video when the curtains closed while Chucky was still performing. Finally, I might as well mention a few games and rides this location has. Some of them are still there, but not all of them. Games include Angry Birds, Subway Surfers, and this fidget spinner ticket redemption game. Remember when those were a thing? And they even had Sonic Blast Ball! As for rides, they have this really cool submarine ride that has a few screens and Chucky in the background, this little train ride, and hey look, it's Bob the Builder again! Before I talk about the next remodel this location received, I thought I should talk about all the crazy stories and crimes that have happened at Castleton's location. For some reason, a bunch of incidents have happened there, and I'm not sure why. Is it because Castleton has a lot of crime in the area? Don't take offense to this, local residents. I'm only mentioning these for historical significance. By the way, for some locations, I couldn't find any weird stories or incidents. The first major documented incident to happen at the location was in December of 2000, when a group of 5 teenagers attempted to rob the place just before closing. The group first went into Chuck E. Cheese when an employee called 911 to report them loitering. They then put on masks and held employees and customers at gunpoint. When the police got there, one officer shot through the glass door and it hit one of the teens, but he did survive. All 5 were arrested after attempting to flee, and a year later they all pled guilty to 5 felony charges. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the last robbery to happen there, or the last gun-related incident to occur. In 2005, a minor incident occurred when a child was accidentally left behind by his parents. The workers called police and hoped his parents would return, but they didn't. He was eventually returned to his parents, but his parents claimed they didn't know he went missing, and they thought he left with his aunt. Another incident happened in 2009 when a group of about a dozen Black, Asian, and Hispanic customers filed a lawsuit against the location, accusing the former manager of being racist. They claimed the manager used racial slurs and was extremely rude towards them. One incident involved the manager forcing a group of adults and children to either eat standing or eat outside, despite there being plenty of empty tables. He even called police when they sat down. The lawsuit was soon dismissed not long after, but I really hope that guy got fired. A year later, in 2010, a woman used a young child to commit a crime by having the young girl steal another woman's purse during a birthday party. Unfortunately, I couldn't find out if the woman was ever caught. Castleton's Chuck E. Cheese would go clean for a few years until 2016, when the next major incident occurred, although this one didn't primarily involve CEC, but rather a different business. So in 2016, news broke that the adult entertainment store, Hustler Hollywood, was planning to open a new location in Indianapolis. And where would this location be? Well, none other than East 82nd Street, right next to the Chuck E. Cheese's. People, mostly parents, were extremely pissed that such an inappropriate store would open right next to a place that children go to. City council members tried their hardest to block the business from opening. In 2017, it was found out that zoning laws would prohibit Hustler Hollywood from opening near CEC. They tried to appeal but failed, so they ended up suing the city of Indianapolis. Finally, after a lengthy court battle and several appeals, in 2021, the business finally opened in its originally planned spot, right next to Chuck E. Cheese, and now it's kind of become a meme online. And yes, it's still there to this day. During the whole Hustler Hollywood lawsuit, another incident took place at the Castleton Chuck E. Cheese. This time it involved a woman pulling a gun on another woman, all because she confronted the other woman for stealing her daughter's tickets. Basically what happened was, after Chucky threw out tickets, a woman stole tickets from a kid, and then the kid's mom got angry at the woman. The woman then got in the mom's face and pulled out a gun and said, "I'll kill you." All this happening in a freaking Chuck E. Cheese. The woman later claimed that she only pointed her finger at the woman and didn't steal tickets. I couldn't find out if the woman was charged or not, but if this gun thing actually happened, hopefully she did. In 2018, something else really terrible happened at the location, but this time it didn't involve any people, but rather water. The location flooded. That's right, the Castleton Chuck E. Cheese completely flooded, due to either heavy rainfall or a busted pipe. I couldn't find the real cause. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but some things were damaged, like a few games, and unfortunately, the Studio C Alpha stage. So the location temporarily closed down around June or July 2018 to fix up the place. Well, fix everything but the stage, because instead the location decided to do something else with it, and you guys aren't gonna like it. In November 2018, the location underwent its most recent remodel. This time it was turned into the abomination known as CEC 2.0. I'm really starting to like that new word. Abomination! As for why Castleton got 2.0, well, it's pretty clear why. The location flooded, and it was already damaged, and CEC always likes to take advantage of natural disasters when it comes to 2.0 remodels. Unfortunately, since this location was closed during the remodel, I can't give you a timeline for when everything occurred. All I know is that it started in November 2018 and was completed in January 2019. The exterior didn't see too much change. Really, the only changes made were to the signage. The main part where the logo was is now green, with that crappy Microsoft Paint No Eyebrows Chucky logo. The sides of the logo now have these brown circular designs with the old school Chuck E. Cheese font on it. The restaurant's name was also changed from Chuck E. Cheese's to Chuck E. Cheese Pizzeria and Games. As for the interior, this is where the main changes took place. All the old store art was trashed and replaced with the new Subway-looking artwork. Some of the older games were thrown out and new games were added, but they did actually keep most of the older games. Skytubes and Toddler Zone were also removed. The worst part about the remodel was of course the change 2.0 is best known for. They removed the animatronics. Now I know Castleton's Chuck was damaged in the flood, and it didn't work anymore, but I still hate that animatronics aren't a part of 2.0. As for what happened to him, he was destroyed. Well, I mean, he was already destroyed from the flood, but he was officially destroyed during the remodel. R.I.P. Castleton bot. So you're probably wondering what replaced the animatronic. Well, it was of course a crappy dance floor and TVs. And the space the show once was now has portraits of the characters, Chuck, Helen, Munch, Jasper, and Pasquale, in that order. At least they put them in the 3-stage position. However, since Castleton was an early 2.0 remodel, there's some things about it that make it kinda unique compared to newer 2.0 remodels. For example, their dance floor is way bigger compared to newer remodels. It also has a purple border and individual LED lights that are able to make patterns, unlike today's dance floor which is just a giant TV on the floor. Speaking of TVs, the TV above the dance floor also shows how old this remodel is, as instead of there being a giant TV on the wall, it's 6 TVs mounted above the dance floor. There are also lights around the showroom that are programmed with shows. Well, they were until recently. The grand reopening of the newly remodeled Chuck E. Cheese's of Castleton/Indianapolis, Indiana was on January 19, 2019, as the first CEC 2.0 in the state of Indiana. There was a ribbon-cutting ceremony where Chuck E. Cheese himself helped cut the ribbon. But they not only had Chucky, but they also had both Helen and Munch. Now I don't think Castleton actually owns these costumes, I think they were rented out just for the event. While most Indianapolis residents were happy that Chuck E. Cheese was finally open again, with a new look, others were mad simply because it's a 2.0, and that it was a former Showbiz location that's now botless. I think this picture pretty much sums everything up. And that's the complete history of the Chuck E. Cheese's in Castleton, Indiana. Now let's let this guy grieve and move on to the next location. And this one is also a fan favorite.
I like the skee ball. I like the basketball. The rides. The games. The ball crawl. The pizza. And Chuck E. Cheese. Only one kid place has all of these.
Chuck E. Cheese's, where a kid can be a kid.
I will now talk about the Chuck E. Cheese's on East Washington Street. Not the current one, but rather the original location. So they would receive concept unification around 1991 or 1992, but they kept the Showbiz Pizza name for a short while after, before changing it to Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza with the new logo. They also got the concept unification character posters. But those didn't last long, as they would soon get the record posters in their place with a small remodel in the mid-90s. This also introduced the newer style character portraits, and that cool Chuck E. Cheese Mount Rushmore wall piece. In either the late 90s or early 2000s, the location remodeled to a Phase 3 store. They changed the logo to the Cool Chuck logo, but interestingly they actually kept the name Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza, and it actually stayed like that for the rest of its existence. They kept a lot of the Phase 2 decor and added new Phase 3 decor like the knick-knack shelves, sports equipment, some checkers, postcard posters, sports magazines, and movie parody posters like the Indiana Jasper poster. As for the game room, they added Skytubes which actually have the Skytubes text with them. I've never seen that before. They had standard arcade games like air hockey and a bunch of kiddie rides, such as the Kentucky Derby horse, that zebra print safari truck, a unique looking Chucky car where Chuck is in his red and blue Cool Chuck outfit, and while Bob the Builder wasn't there, Barney is here with his train. For the rest of the 2000s and into the 2010s, nothing much changed at this location. Again, most of the changes made were to the animatronic show. Munch Jr. was removed and all the characters got the new plastic masks, Chucky got the cool Chuck outfit, and Pasquale's drum front changed from the original concept unification front to this drum front that kinda looks like Duke's from the Rock-afire Explosion, but it's blue and has music notes on it. Jasper at least got to keep his Beach Bear guitar, and the rest of the prop characters didn't change. That was until the late 2000s when Pizza King was removed from the stage left. There was only one really big publicized incident that happened at this location. I'm sure more have happened, but this is the only one I could find. So in July 2006, the manager at the restaurant named Paul Dubbin was accused of being racist towards black people. He apparently ordered a group of African Americans to leave after there was a disagreement over a bill for a birthday party. As the group was leaving, Paul allegedly shouted, "Don't worry about the check, just get your black, swear word, out of here." A lawsuit was filed in 2007, and the group involved also claimed that the same manager kicked out another black couple right before the incident took place. A local news outlet reached out to the location, but in a surprising turn of events, the employee said that no one named Paul Dubbin worked there. So either he was fired, or the whole incident was made up. The lawsuit was settled in 2008. Man, there's been a lot of racist incidents that happened at the Indianapolis Chuck E. Cheese locations, which makes me question, is there a lot of racism in Indianapolis? Maybe the managers involved are lucky these didn't happen today, as things would have gotten so much worse. Speaking of getting worse, by 2011 things were getting pretty bad for this location. It wasn't really the fault of Chuck E. Cheese's, but rather the surrounding area. The shopping center CEC was a part of was pretty much abandoned, as most of the stores, including the main store Target, closed, relocated, or were abandoned. So with CEC being one of the last tenants of the shopping center, they made a difficult decision. In November 2011, after 29 years of operation, the Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza on East Washington Street in Indianapolis closed down. The decision was made to shut down the location due to loss of money from being in an abandoned shopping center. However, this was not the end of Chuck E. Cheese on East Washington Street, as this location actually relocated a few miles down the street to another shopping center, but more on that in a later chapter. Pretty soon the space was gutted, and the animatronics were all sent to different locations for spare parts. It had almost been like Chuck E. Cheese was never there, except for the label scar, of course. You can actually see the original checkers where the awning once was. The space sat abandoned for a few years until a business called Elegant Salon de Eventos, a banquet hall company, took over, and despite being gutted a few years prior, some CEC artifacts are still in the building. For example, the doors to the establishment are still red, and there's a few stickers left over on some doors, but the biggest and most surprising change left behind was none other than the 3-stage itself. Now obviously there's no animatronics, but the same stage they once stood on is still there, and is used for live non-robotic bands, as well as other presentations. They even kept the blue valance above the stage. Unfortunately, someone told me that this business closed in 2022, and the building is abandoned again. However, according to Google, it is still open, so I don't know if that person was lying or not, and I'm not sure if it's still around. But that concludes another Indianapolis Chuck E. Cheese location's history. Let's go talk about the second to last location in this video, and this one kinda gets a little overlooked.
I know a place where moms can say, any kid of any age, 2, 4, 8, 10 or more, it's fine. They can be a Chuck kid.
Have a cool Chuck time.
At Chuck E. Cheese's.
Where a kid can be a kid.
Talking about the history of the Chuck E. Cheese's in Greenwood, the reason I say this location is overlooked is because it doesn't get as much attention as Castleton, or the Washington Street location, but it is still a pretty cool location. Anyway, it received concept unification around 1991, replacing the Rock-afire Explosion with Munch's Make-Believe Band, but it did keep the Showbiz name until around 1993 when it switched to Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza and got a new logo. And as usual, they would go through another minor remodel in the mid-90s which brought with it new decor. I'm sure you're probably getting tired of me repeating myself at this point. Fast forward to the year 2000, this is when major changes were made to the location. First, the whole store was expanded with a new front entrance area to make room for more games and rides, as well as the Sky Tubes and Toddler Zone. Next, the location was changed to a Phase 3 store, with a new logo, but they didn't keep the pizza name, new booths, new posters and decor like the postcard posters and knick-knack shelves. And finally, an unfortunate thing happened when the 3-stage was removed, and just like Castleton, it was replaced by a Studio C Alpha. This one actually predated Castleton's Alpha, as it was one of the first to be installed. The stage itself was the exact same as Castleton's, and any other Alpha installed at the time. Something interesting happened in the fall of 2007. The location would both receive and not receive Phase 4. What do I mean by that? Well, the interior of the restaurant was updated to Phase 4, with most Phase 3 decor removed, walls painted, and new decor added. However, the exterior retained the Phase 3 logo and colors. It wouldn't be until September 2010 when they finally changed the exterior to match the interior, with the purple awnings, checkered pattern, and Avenger Chuck logo. And from this point on, there wasn't another major change made to the location for close to a decade. The only changes made were new games and rides being added and old ones being removed, including the Toddler Zone. As for what games this location had, they have Flappy Bird, Jurassic Park Arcade, and Jumping Fantasy. As for rides, they had the Kentucky Derby, the same unique Chucky car ride that Washington Street had, although he would soon be replaced by Avenger Chuck and later Rockstar Chuck. And finally, for the last time on this episode, it's Bob the Builder yet again. I think he's following me. Other changes made include in 2016, when the interactive Studio C console was removed and replaced with the standard front, but it's actually unique, as it has a different never-before-seen font for the CEC letters. The Chucky animatronic also got his baseball cap back after it was removed due to Rockstar Chuck being introduced. However, this would be the last change made involving the Chucky bot, as pretty soon after, his days became numbered. In August 2019, Greenwood would begin work on its next remodel. This is of course the abomination known as Chuck E. Cheese 2.0. I honestly don't know why they chose to remodel this location, since I don't think there was anything wrong with it. The bot was in good condition, and it wasn't dirty or damaged by Mother Nature. I'm guessing corporate thought that since Castleton remodeled, they might as well do Greenwood too. Again, I don't have a timeline for this remodel, but I know it began in August 2019, and concluded in October 2019. It featured all the same features as Castleton, including the same decor and the same setup for the showroom. The only difference is the order of the character portraits on the wall. Instead of them being in a 3-stage order, the order goes Helen, Pasquale, Jasper, Munch, and Chucky. It is also an early 2.0 setup with the dance floor having a purple border and being larger than modern day dance floors. It also has the 6 TVs right above the floor. The grand opening ceremony was on October 17th, 2019, and only featured Chucky and no other characters, but he did lead everybody into the restaurant and danced on the dance floor. Now you guys are probably wondering what happened to Greenwood's Studio C bot. Well, unfortunately, he had a sad fate because he was destroyed. In fact, there's a video showing this exact bot being thrown into a dumpster. Look at how they massacred my boy! They ripped him in half! They ripped him in half, those evil mother. Alright, I'm done. I'm done talking about this location after what I just witnessed. Let me calm down by talking about the last location I briefly referenced a few times already in this video.
Yum, 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 fun, fun, fun. It's Chuck E. Cheese's newest Yum and Fun deal. A delicious one-topping large pizza.
That's the yum.
plus 75 tokens
That's the fun.
for $25. No one else offers your family that.
Yum, 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 fun, fun, fun.
Go to chuckycheese.com and get your coupon for our new one large pizza, 75 tokens, $25 Yum and Fun deal.
Where a kid can be a kid.
Only at Chuck E. Cheese's.
The last location I'll be discussing in this video is the new location on East Washington Street. This location opened in December 2011 and replaced both the old Washington Street location and the 38th Street location. CEC Corporate thought that instead of having two small locations in the same city, why not combine them into a larger location? Construction on this location actually began a few months before each location closed, as seen in this old Google Street View photo. It was to no longer be located in the Washington Square Shopping Center, but now it's a few miles away in the Washington Shops Shopping Center. Since it opened in 2011, it was of course a Phase 4 store from the start, with the familiar checkered pattern and Avenger Chuck logo, but strangely no awnings. The interior was also a normal Phase 4 interior, but they did have these cool looking booths that I haven't seen at any other location I've talked about in this series. As for games and rides, they had all the basics that any other location had. Some games include Raging Ape Game, which Greenwood also had. Wait, does this game actually shock you? But you know what shocked me? This location actually had the old Sonic Spinner game. I don't think they have it anymore, but they did actually have it at one point. The rides include the Kentucky Derby, the Chucky Car, the Hot Chocolate Cup with the creepy marshmallows, Noah's Ark, and this old school motorcycle. I actually have a theory that some of these were actually brought over from the other two locations, since this location does feature some older games and rides. What was not carried over from the other locations were the 3-stage animatronics, as instead this location received the most common stage type at the time, the Studio C Beta. The Studio C Beta is fairly similar to the Studio C Alpha I discussed earlier in the video, but it is a different stage. For example, it has no other animatronics except for the Pizza Time Clock and Chucky. And speaking of Chuck, he's no longer a 32 movement bot, but rather a 16 movement bot. It does still feature the blue screen, the 3 TVs, and the front with the CEC letters on it, though it is different than the Alpha. I don't think this location ever had the interactive camera, as those were being phased out at the time and the Ticket Blaster was in its place. Also recently, the blue screen was removed, and it's now a black wall with photos of kids and their parents on it. Despite being a newer location, it actually has had several incidents occur there. One is a pretty common incident, while the other one is unfortunately a very tragic incident. The first major incident happened in December 2017, when a fight between two women broke out inside the restaurant. Wow, I finally get to talk about a Chuck E. Cheese fight in this series! The whole incident was caught on camera and became viral soon after, as most CEC fights do. Anyway, police were called out, but by the time they arrived the women had already fled the scene. No one was charged, and it's still unclear why they started fighting in the first place. As for the other incident, it's definitely no laughing matter. In fact, it's tragic, and it might be too disturbing for some of you. If anyone finds this too disturbing or heartbreaking, then skip to this timestamp. You have been warned, and you're welcome. On February 21st, 2021, at around 5:30 p.m., 34-year-old Anthony Tinnen was shot and killed right outside the Chuck E. Cheese. He had just left the restaurant and was heading to his car with his 3 young children when somebody shot him. The gunfire also broke several windows of the restaurant and other local businesses in the shopping center. People and children inside the Chuck E. Cheese immediately started freaking out as they tried to hide under tables while others fled out the doors. Thankfully, nobody else was hurt. The suspects fled the scene in a white van, and unfortunately to this day, they haven't been caught by Indianapolis police. The location temporarily closed down for a few days to repair the windows before reopening. This incident was actually so bad, CEC considered closing down the location permanently, though that didn't actually happen. The incident shook up the city so bad, there were several meetings held by community members trying to end violence in the city and surrounding areas. This was a tragedy. one that I hope never happens again. My heart goes out to the family of Anthony Tinnen. He was a good man taken too soon. Rest in peace. And that brings us to today. As of February 2023, 3 out of the 5 Chuck E. Cheese's in Indianapolis, Indiana are still open, some locations surviving better than others. The locations that are still open include Castleton, Greenwood, and East Washington Street. Castleton currently has a 3.8 star rating on Google, Greenwood has a 3.9 star rating, and Washington Street has a 4-star rating, which is probably because it's the last store in Indianapolis with an animatronic. If you would like to visit any of these locations, Castleton's address is 5501 E 82nd Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46250. It's located in the Castleton Point Shopping Center. Greenwood's address is 8804 US-31, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46227, located in the Greenwood Shopping Center. And finally, Washington Street's address is 10021 E Washington Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, located in Washington Shops. If anyone is interested in visiting the former locations that have since closed down, then 38th Street's address is 49110 W 38th Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46254. The old Washington Street address is 8109 E Washington Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46219. I'd recommend visiting Washington Street first, since they are the only indie store with an animatronic, and who knows when they will get 2.0. Castleton and Greenwood you could probably skip, since, well, you know, they're 2.0 stores. I can't forgive Greenwood for what they did to the bot. And with that, this officially concludes the history of every Chuck E. Cheese's in Indianapolis, Indiana. And there you have it, the history of Chuck E. Cheese's and Showbiz Pizza in Indianapolis, Indiana. I hope you guys enjoyed the Season 3 premiere. It's nice to get back into the swing of things, especially the CEC videos. I also hope you guys liked the inclusion of background music, since I know many have been asking for it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below which location is your favorite, or if you have any memories from visiting any of these locations. Also, feel free to correct some mistakes I made regarding these locations. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the rest of the History of series, Season 3. Bye-bye!
My best friend is a purple alligator, and he rides on a magic elevator. We take trips all the way to China.
crazy destination. There's no need for hesitation. You can be a member of imagination. We think of the best creations. We're the citizens of imagination. If you're full of inspiration, come and be a member of imagination. Oh, 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 oh,
Let it ring, let it ring, let it ring, let it ring. Oh, man.
Oh my god, guys, I completely forgot to talk about Buzzy Buzzy Bee. What kind of a CEC video is this if I haven't discussed Buzzy Buzzy Bee? That's my favorite arcade game. Oh, I feel so ashamed.